Welcome to Embodied Business Inspired Brain podcast. This is Anne, and we are once again thrilled to support you in deepening your connection to your perceptions and the sensations that you have within your body experience, and connecting that to your inspiration in your brain and your mind, and looking at all of this through the lens of self-growth and your business and leadership development. Today, we are going to specifically be speaking about money and safety, why and how we keep ourselves from what we say we desire. We know you're going to really enjoy this today. It should probably bring up some good questions and some good thoughts for you to think about. So whether you're listening on a drive, on a walk, bicycling around, doing your dishes, or out in nature, we are here, and we hope that you leave today with a little more inspiration and some clear action to take.
Hiya. Money and safety. Money. Yesterday, you and I were having a conversation, and the bottom line when we got off the phone was, we're just going to talk about the money. And that that got me thinking about today's show. And we did some work with our long-term mentoring group yesterday, which was also about the embodied or nervous system experience. I won't say because those are not necessarily the same thing, but the embodied experience of when we're resistant to something. And then it got me thinking about how money, if money is power and money is freedom, what the hell is there to be resistant to? Right? That's like, but we know it's not that simple. And so I'm really excited today to be talking about this from a myriad of perspectives, so that potentially those of you who are watching and listening are likely very embroiled in the embodiment field or profession. And that means something specific, which we'll get into, and it has specific implications. And we want to talk about that in relationship to money, and then feeling safe or not safe in relationship to earning money, charging your worth, etc. So money and safety. I'm really excited for this conversation. How are you today, Anne?
I'm very well. Here in Northern California, it is sputtering some rain, and that, to be honest, when it rains, it feels a lot more safe because we're in the worst drought in like 1,200 years. So I'm glad it's raining.
Yeah. So we have decided that we're going to start our shows with something called Real Life Riff. And we're talking about what's in progress, what's in process. I would like to turn your attention to this lovely item that I'm sitting on, which is my new blue velvet couch in my new redesigned, what I'm calling coffee room. This is where I come and have my coffee, and I sit on my blue velvet couch and I look out at my backyard, which I have now just redone, and I'm planting new plants, and I bought new patio furniture, and it is a spectacular thing. That's what's in process for me. And I'm really excited about it because I am committed to beautiful spaces and beautiful experiences. And I've been having something really interesting come up around that. Just to tie us into the money piece, which is I was sharing this with you, Anne, recently. I have not said no to anything I wanted in creating this space, in recreating this space. Like, I have been thoughtful and mindful and responsibly spending, blah, blah, blah. But I have not said no to the blue velvet couch. I have not said no to new plants. I have not said no to new art. I have not said no to like the little things that really are meaningful for me. And in that experience, I've had this underlying voice that has said, should you really be doing that? Isn't that frivolous? Aren't you going to seem greedy? What will people think? And there's a handful of people who I care that are related, like deeply related to this space and are engaged with me in a financial sense. And then it's like maybe I'm being frivolous, maybe I'm being irresponsible. But the truth is, I'm not. And so it's been this very interesting evolution for me. And particularly to notice this undertone, like my housemate who just moved out. I bought a new rug and I put the rug in the living room, and he said, another rug? He said, I don't think you need another rug. And I said, you don't get to have an opinion about the rugs in my space. So, but then I started to think, then it triggered the little voice that said, you're spending too much. You're being frivolous. You're being greedy. You should save your money. That's not what wealthy people do. They're frugal. They manage their money better. Like all the little interesting unwindings. But at the end of the day, I'm super happy to be spending my hard-earned money on making my space beautiful. So that's my real life riff. That's what's in progress or process for me. How about you, Anne?
I love that, because as soon as I sat down with you, I said, and there's that new blue couch.
That's right.
I'm used to seeing you, within a square of space. And I'm like, I've never seen that square of space. I'm like, is she traveling? And I'm like, no, that's her blue couch.
That's right. This is my new, and I'm gonna record from every room in my house, which now is completely up to me. I can be anywhere I want, which is wonderful. Fabulous. Yeah, it feels good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that side and what's going on in your life right now. What's going on in my life right now is I am still unwinding that ability to really spend on myself for the sake of beauty. And I think for my own pleasure, like I have been, because I want to be clear, like prior to stepping into the knowledge economy, I didn't have as much opportunity to spend. And I was much more thought like, I'll buy less lattes, I guess. And that's how I'll be more wealthy.
Yeah. Cause that's what we're taught, right?
Right. We're taught to just deny. And one of the things that I have found myself doing is sort of slipping into this old pattern where I have more income. And I recently had a surgery on my hip. It was called a labral hip repair surgery, and it's been tremendously successful. Although for those of you who've had one or hopefully, or you may have to have one someday, the recovery is like longer than something like a hip replacement. But you get to keep your hip. So I'm thrilled about that. But it took me, I paid for recovery support. So I paid for physical therapy out of pocket, even though I have very good health insurance as my husband's in a union. But the physical therapy I was getting was not supportive until I found this amazing person. And so it's interesting because, and then I was also spending some of my money on mental health, because I had to sort of process going through the surgery. If anyone has had surgery, sometimes it can bring up emotions. And so it certainly did for me. And so it's really good for me. Again, that was something that I'm paying for out of my own pocket. So it's kind of this interesting thing where it's like, well, I'm willing to spend a good bit of money for healthcare to get myself to neutral. And now it's like, but I want to spend more to go above neutral, right?
Yeah,
To more of that, like,
fascinating.
yeah, that pleasure zone or that desire zone,
Yeah.
because in the past, that's part of why I became a Pilates instructor is I had pain. And so I spent like all my money on Pilates so that I could like get to neutral
Mm-hmm.
instead of beyond it. So it's very interesting. It's like, and I'm working into that, but I think we all have our money stories, and it's just been really, I mean, I have been getting facials. That is something that I've been doing.
I was
Again,
totally commending you yesterday on that
yeah,
when we were talking, because that's one of my favorite things to do too, is a facial. But then you
yeah.
had
And
something else. Yeah, you were saying more. Say more about that, because it was an interesting train of thought.
well, again, like a facial is sort of like a base, like foundation layer.
Mm.
Like I'm always very confident with spending money on the foundations where it's not flashy, or if it's
Mm.
flashy, it's like not expensive but flashy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you get a facial, it's like, well, that's the foundation of your skincare. It's not like I'm going to a place where they do your makeup and they like give you a full, I don't even know what you call it, but they put a bunch of makeup on you and then you buy it because it looks good and it matches you. I don't I've done it like once
Whatever
in my
that
life.
is.
And then you buy all the makeup, right? Although, so that's just an example of that, of like kind of how I'm more comfortable spending money in a way that is, so I love being around you and that sense of beauty, because when I am in your space, it feels really good and it's
I'm so glad.
inspiring. Yeah. I mean, and so I think, and it's funny because with my business, I have remodeled it multiple times. I've invested in people to do feng shui in the past. I've just hired someone to do plants in the studio. So it's
Oh,
like I'll spend
nice.
money on the business, right? And it's just interesting how our different money stories and our spending habits, when you think about them, can really reveal a bit of your money story. And I hadn't heard about money stories for a long time, or before, about a couple of years ago. And so in case you're listening, and you don't know what a money story is, it's just that ability to say, what stories maybe did your grandparents or parents or family have that weren't necessarily spoken out loud,
Yeah.
but that you just sort of soaked up in your childhood about how to use money, how to spend money. Because a lot of that just kind of is a subconscious way of um, of working with your money, and so and using it and spending it on yourself. And so for me, it's been a good reflection to see that.
Yeah, yeah. I want to give some examples of money stories that can be unconsciously inhibiting the actions that we take or the energy we put forth to acquiring wealth, building wealth, right? Making money. However, those are not necessarily the same things, but making money and then building wealth. Um, I in one of my earlier partnerships, my business partner was married to a man whose family had a lot of money. So there was like trust money, like, but lots of historical family money. And he was like, they were so, it's like this, you hear this story, right? This is let's just call it an archetype, kind of think about it that way. Like Ebenezer Scrooge, like so frugal, like so withholding of the money. Like, the reason I have money is because I don't spend money. Right. But that had been like, I had known I knew his father just, kind of peripherally. and I had heard stories, and it's so interesting to, when you take the 10,000-foot view, as you like to say, Anne, you could see the belief system passed down around money. Like the only reason we have money is because we do not spend it. But there was one place that he spent it, and it was traveling, but just himself or his children, not necessarily traveling with his partner, nor sharing that money with her to invest in her business. It's like, so that's an example of how a money story can be ancestral, historical, and shape the way that you then behave and relate to money. It's really interesting. So I was thinking this morning about, well, first of all, you and I were in conversation a couple of days ago around what is the energy that we are putting into our financial goals. And one of the things, I feel like one of the lessons you and I have learned is it's not powerful enough in terms of creating action to want to make X amount of dollars. The X amount of dollars have to mean something, right? They have to mean something powerful enough that supports a high level of positive urgency. So what you will hear Anne and I talk about frequently is the difference between positive urgency and negative urgency, which is it's a language and a framing of taking action that has been passed down to us, and that we found very useful. When you have negative urgency around money, it's a sense of desperation, right? Like if I don't make this work, everything's going to fall apart. I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to be humiliated. I'm not going to be able to live. I'm not going to, it's like, and so you're driven to take action to make money, but it's coming from a negative place, right? It's coming from a sense of lack. It's coming from a sense of, I don't have enough. I will never have enough, and then the story kind of unravels from there. Positive urgency is, I desire to do amazing things in my life and amazing things for people. And I desire to have amazing experiences. And that is what's driving my desire to take action toward making money and building wealth. And our mentor and coach was sharing with me that after buying and remodeling her dream home last year, she was like, well, I don't know what else I want. Like, I just achieved the thing I wanted most. And I've been having that experience a little bit too. It's like, what I have always wanted is not to worry about money and to have money saved. And I don't worry about money. And I have lots of money saved. So what I noticed is like, well, what's my urgency now? And so you and I were talking about that recently, Anne, and you shared some really helpful things with me. But what I wanted to share is that she said it wasn't a thing that was driving her urgency. It was an experience. She said, I want to have fun and experience joy in my business. Like, that's what's driving me to be in my business, to build my business, is like having fun, being excited, being creative. And it was like, oh, I can feel that. So that was powerful for me, because I think it's easy to stay in a place of acquiring money or building our businesses because we want to have things, or we want to take vacations, right? Or we want to buy property. But it's an interesting shift to say, what if I'm building my business just simply because I want it to be a thrilling adventure? And that was a kind of a cool shift. I was like, okay, so what is that for me? What's the being experience that's driving me rather than the having experience?
I loved that she shared that. And my immediate thought was, well, I already did that. Because I think about, so we both opened our studios very young,
Mhm.
right? Um, I had children. I didn't have a child in my life until I was 31 with my stepdaughter. And so I had my entire 20s. I was making pretty good money. Single woman living in San Francisco. I and so I used my Pilates business to travel. Like I was really financially totally fine. So I taught Pilates in the Dominican Republic. I taught Pilates in Jamaica. I taught Pilates in Turkey. Um, Later on, I taught some Pilates in Hong Kong, Malaysia, because I wanted to travel abroad. And then when I got like right at that 30-year-old threshold, I said, well, how can I leverage my business or my Pilates experience in teaching to go to grad school? And then when I came back, then um, I had a child with my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter was, part of my financial responsibility at that point. And then I had two more children, and it was like, boom. So then I was like, okay, so I've used and I think that I want to share that because I do think a lot of people enter into Pilates or enter into embodied practices, particularly if they've been in corporate world and they made a bunch of money, or maybe they didn't even make that much money, but they just couldn't handle the stress or didn't like it.
Mhm.
And so then they choose to come into the Pilates or yoga or, some sort of embodied practice space. And I feel like for me, it was like this trade off. Well, I'm doing my passion, I'm doing what I love.
Mhm.
Um, I'm able to travel with it. So, gosh, if I wanted money on top of it, that would be
It's
too
asking
much.
too much. Mhm.
It's asking too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't until I had children where I was like, it's just, I can't, it doesn't make sense to be away from them and not bring in income.
Mhm.
um, but I feel like that for those of us who might be stuck in that place of like, well, I do it because I love it or I love helping people. Or, I'd like to think that I would come into a place of like, I I want to bring in more money and desire more money as an entrepreneur because I'm not just a Pilates studio owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not just a Pilates instructor. I'm also an entrepreneur, as many of us are who have stepped into this realm. Is that I hope that I would desire the money just for my own sake, whether or not I'd had children or not.
Mhm.
It's sort of like you can always say, well, it's for the kids, because that's the noble thing to say, right? Like that's what we're conditioned to, well, if the money's for that, of course it's for the kids. But I'm like, well, I'm hoping my ambition would have come around at some point, regardless, um, for the money piece. So I'm wondering, do you feel like when you first started your studio that it was really based on like, I'm going to build this Pilates studio, like back in the early aughts to bring in a big income? Was that?
For me, it was really about the freedom. Like I knew after having been a journalist for several years out of college, I just knew that I wanted to be my own boss. So for me, it was more the
Mm,
freedom of choice um, to build a business. And I'm a creative person, so I was really drawn to the entrepreneurial path of creating and building, and I love building teams, and I'm quite good at it. So the idea of like having a team of teachers and a community of people coming in for, for movement experiences, I think was my big motivation. I and I wanted to be able to travel, and I did a lot of travel. Even after we had kids, we traveled with the kids all over the world. Um, I think I didn't start my business because I thought, oh, this is going to be a huge money making opportunity. Um, But I did have my mentor, my Pilates mentor said to me once, "You'll never make money teaching Pilates." And I remember the moment, I remember where we were, I remember how I felt when she said that. And in my mind, I said, that is bullshit. Like that was my inner response was, it's not, it can't be true. It's not true. I didn't believe it. And it took me a long time to get to a place where I could leverage my knowledge and not just be stuck in the dollars for hours, you know, showing up and teaching 30 hours a week while running a business and raising a kid. It took me a long time to get there, but I did. And I know that
Yeah.
you can do it too. So this is one of the things I wanted to talk about also is, yes, we have to do the mindset work. We just do. You have to open your eyes to the things inside of you that are ingrained, nurtured, implied culturally, socially, economically, uh, that are holding you back, right? Stopping you from feeling safe moving into a place of greater abundance financially. And I want to circle back to, what does that even mean to feel safe, in making money? But one of the things that you and I do and feel really strongly about is, and you really, I think I didn't understand it until you verbalized it, but it's like in a service-based economy where you are charging an hourly rate for the thing that you do, your money making potential will always be finite. But we, as highly educated, exceptionally trained individuals, particularly in the Pilates realm, but in the health and wellness, many of us are, master's degrees and PhDs. I don't know how many of those folks we work with, PTs and OTs, and who are not making any money. And it's a real shame and it's disheartening. But the problem is, we're working in the service economy. And so one of the things that Anne is spectacular at doing, the way her mind works, is like, I see all these other people out there leveraging their knowledge for a lot of income return. Why on earth aren't we doing that in this industry? And then she goes out and she finds the people who are starting to bridge the gap between the models that work and our industry. Let's just call us the embodied professionals, right? Any kind of health and wellness uh, professional. And that has been really liberating for us to shift out of the service economy and into the knowledge economy. And I wonder if you would talk a little bit about that, Anne. What does it actually mean to, what's the knowledge economy?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I saw it very clearly during the lockdown in COVID and the beginning of it. And I was reading a lot of articles about people who were working from home. They essentially had an office job and now they were working from home, and it was all crazy because particularly if you had children, it's just another level of craziness. Or if you were caretaking anybody, maybe even an older parent, it's just trying to work and then caretake. And I just remember reflecting on those articles and being like, well, those might have been the clients coming into my studio. And here I am working with all of my teachers, and we're all pivoting to Zoom. And everything, it's like, it's so transactional. It's like dollars, hour, time, hour. And it just got me thinking about the results that we get our students or our patients, whatever term you give them within our industry of health and wellness, is not transactional. They're not only getting the result during the time they're with you, right? There's
Right.
so many stories of, moving again, feeling confident again in their bodies, or just absolute stress release, like, feeling like they can actually breathe again, you know? Um, and one of the biggest things I think that we do, particularly if within the health and wellness field, you work with bodies, that knowledge that you gain about that individual person's specific body, but not only their body, their embodied self, their moods, their feelings, all of that. The longer you work with that person, it's almost like it's an exponential increase of how much you can support them, because you know their body so well, you know the exact move that, or the exact stretch, or the exact whatever adjustment, whatever work you do with them that is going to relieve their discomfort and, ideally even move them towards more optimal health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whereas if they went to someone else, it might take another person, even if they're quite good, just because you have to get to know the body, it might take that other person 5 hours before they get to the level that you're at, right? And so it got me thinking that there is this body of knowledge that you have that's very personalized to this person. Yet maybe you incrementally raise your rates, but that it's not in alignment, the payment between the knowledge that you have and how much you can support them versus how much you can incrementally raise your rates. And so it really got me thinking that, well, if all these other industries get to work from home and have really powerful results with their clients, why can't our industry? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're just as smart, we're just as supportive of and we get amazing results for the people we work with. But you can't try to take the service-based economy and take it from a live event situation and just plop it into a virtual situation. That's not going to be as potent. And so that's a really where I think it was just really thinking about people outside of our industry and how, there's this freedom to be able to, you know, well, I can't work with my kid, with this client from 3 to 7 because there's homework I have to do with my children, but I can work on my work from, 8 to 10 o'clock at night. I'm just thinking of when the pandemic was happening. And I'm like, yeah, but we can't do that in the model we're working in. So how can we shift that model?
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, what got me really noodling on that.
Yeah. And then the thing is, like, how do you leverage your knowledge in a way that is not just limited to a live one-on-one interaction, right? And the way you do that is by developing transformational curriculum that supports your clients and your students far longer and in much richer ways, honestly, than just a 1 hour session or a 1 hour engagement per week. And so shifting the model, I feel like, has been, it's like you don't have to drop everything you're doing, but can you hybridize the model so that you can leverage your knowledge for greater wealth rather than feeling like, well, I'm completely handcuffed to, I can't work more than 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, because I've got family responsibilities and, or I just can't. Well, for whatever the reason is. So I think that's been a huge piece for us. And I'm just, it feels important to talk about because it's one of the hardest outside of the box shifts that I've seen um, that there is to make. It's like if you are a dentist, you can only imagine dentistry can be done one way, right? Well, you can only clean teeth when somebody's there with you, obviously. But how else could you support your customers, your patients, that goes well beyond a dental cleaning? Just as an example, right? It, to leverage your knowledge, your skill, your expertise in a different way. I just think it's, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, like, I remember a lot of times hearing in the Pilates world, like, it's kind of exciting to learn all the anatomy, and then you get all excited about the anatomy. And then a lot of people tell you, well, nobody wants to know about the anatomy. So don't bother telling them because they're just not interested. And I know in my studio, what were my clients asking me to pull over the skeleton and pull out an anatomy book? No. But I do know that they are lifelong learners. They like to read. They like to have aha moments. And that is partially why they like Pilates, because Pilates does provide many aha moments in students, right?
Mm-hmm.
That ability to feel your body. And what I found was it's not that they're not interested, it's that they don't want that knowledge while they're on the Cadillac or the Reformer, other than if it's just a 2-sentence blurb about you saying something. They actually do desire that knowledge because most of them are working in the knowledge economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They love to keep learning, right? And they don't all want to check out. I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
And and I've seen it in my own students where, and not, they don't all, because we're all different, but just blanket say no one coming into your studio, unless they want to be a Pilates instructor, wants to know, or a yoga or a Hana somatics or whatever it is you're teaching, wants to know that information. That's just not true. Many of them do. They see other doctors that might not all be allopathic, right? And they like having those cross discussions, and that's meaningful to them because they have an experience in their body that they can't explain. And that's partially why a lot of people work with people in the health and wellness field, is because something in their body is not quite right and they're trying to figure it out. So many people are knowledge seekers. And so I kind of want to like push that myth aside. Of course, not all, I get it, but there are some that are, and we are doing a disservice if we are not offering them more of our knowledge, but it's just not going to be well received when they're like, but I'm really here to move at this point in time.
Yeah, well, I
So,
paid $85 for you to exercise my abs.
yeah.
You know, it's like, I mean, that's the downside of transactional relationships. Is like what's top of mind is, am I getting what I paid for? But when you shift to the knowledge economy and you provide experiences and an opportunity for people to go deeper, that is not based on the transactional exchange, there's so much more freedom. And in that is more autonomy. And that just, we could go down that rabbit hole, but that's not what we're here to talk about. That'll have to be another podcast. I want to shift the conversation again to talk about money and embodiment. Talk about money and embodiment. What I want to start this conversation by clarifying what the title of this podcast and what I said earlier about money and safety. Money is just a made up thing, right? But in our society and in our world, it means freedom, right? It means choice, more freedom, more choice, more power, empowerment. And those things are not always spaces in which we feel safe. And I was thinking this morning about this. So in the Real Life Riff at the beginning of the podcast, I said this little voice that comes up that says, if you have money and you spend it, you don't like, I don't want people to think I'm frivolous, right? That's not a safe space emotionally for me to be in. Like, I don't, that matters to me, right? I don't like, what are the beliefs that we have about rich people, about having a lot of money? A family member asked to borrow money from me recently, and I was like, man, I don't want to be the person that everybody wants to borrow money from. Like, so the underlying fear is that if I have money, people are going to want it, and I'm going to feel obligated to give it, or I'm going to have to enter into those uncomfortable situations. All of that is like resistance to having money. Those thoughts are resistant to having money. Because when I think about that, and that's my assumption about having money, I start to feel not safe. I start to feel uncomfortable, right? In my body experiences, my heart races, I get a little sweaty, my solar plexus gets tight, my stomach turns. It's like I don't want people to think I'm greedy. I don't want people to think I'm frivolous. I don't want people to, expect that I'm going to just lend money, and if I don't, I'm a bad person. Those are all fear-based assumptions. So how do we bring those to the surface so that we can become aware of them and hopefully dismantle them? Because none of it's true. It's all just perception. So that's really what I mean by money and safety. Like, what are you afraid of when you think about, if you had lots of money, like so much money you didn't know what to even do with, like what happens in you? So Anne, talk about money and embodiment. What's the connection?
Yeah, well, I feel like you've touched on it, that
Yeah.
sense of, you know, you can think of it slightly binary, like safety versus non-safety,
Hmm.
or not feeling safe. And what you were sharing is, I feel like it's like a sense of abandonment. If I
Mm,
have too much money, will my family abandon me, or will they lose respect for me? I
mm,
think a lot, maybe even in your own industry, like, will my fellow teachers, will my fellow studio owners, will the fellow people that I speak on conference stages with, are they going to think I'm greedy? Are they going to
mm.
think, um, you know,
Or they're
that
going to resent me because I make money and they don't.
Right, right. And so I think it's very permeating, right? It can be at the family level, it can be in your peer level. And I want to say, let's break that.
Yeah.
Like, there's more than enough. If you zoom out and you look at the economics, right? There's a lot fewer people in the middle class now than there were in previous generations, right? There's a much more wealth disparity now. So a few people, really doing very well in the health and wellness industry is okay, but let's get a bunch of people in the health and wellness industry doing really well. So no matter where you live, housing doesn't feel so extremely expensive, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's like I want to change the whole paradigm. And
Yeah.
it's like, let's there is more than enough in my mind if you are able to change the way you're operating in the economy. So, kind of coming out from that dollars per hour and within to selling your knowledge. But I don't need to go there again. But one of the ways that I think about embodiment, and you were sort of practicing this yesterday, is, you know, where for money, And we also were thinking about, when you think about money, you can think about it on the level of, I want X amount a month, X amount a year. I want to make 10,000 a month. I want to make, whatever it is you want to make, 200,000 a year, 500,000 a year, my goodness, $1 million a year. Like, what's important is, as you think about that, there's a deeper level about what's behind it. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you want to make that much money?
Yeah.
And what I think about is, I would like a larger kitchen so that I can better host my extended family, because my husband has 4 siblings. He's a family of 5 children. And so when you bring everybody together, it's like instantly full. And that doesn't even include like other people you'd like to bring on to the party. So for me, the more income really is tied to community and tied
Mm.
to, and I always used to say, well, I want memories for my kids. Yes, but I also can claim I just want the good memories for myself.
Yeah.
Like, I want the good memories for my kids, absolutely, be with our cousins, but I also want the memories for myself too. And that's something I'm really working to step into. I think it's really easy to say, well, for the kids, and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely for the kids, but what we also need to put ourselves in that equation as well. So for me, that's part of it. Um, and when I think about having a bigger house, it kind of goes back to, well, what about the people around me? Do they have bigger houses? And it kind of, I think, goes back to that abandonment sense. Like, well, will I still have the same friends? Will
Mm.
I still, um, you know, co- be in the same circles? So I think, like, I guess it's like class, you're kind of used to your class level, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you don't know what it's like to be in a different level. Um, and so I think that that's really interesting to think about, because when you step out of something you're familiar with, usually it feels a little uncomfortable, a little
Yeah.
unsafe,
Yes.
even if it's a positive thing,
Yes.
right? And so I feel like, when I feel about abundance or making more money, I still feel, I believe, in my body, a little nervous, right? A
Mm-hmm.
little
Mm-hmm.
unsafe. And how do I work through that? Well, I have some ideas. I know I've been afraid to do other things in my life, and I was afraid and I did it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd like to encourage all of us within this community to do that. If you have deep, strong ambitions to, you know, create more income within the health and wellness field, like, let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Because I'd love to see maybe the health and wellness industry, like, be that pioneer. Like, hey, if you enter into this industry, we're the industry that reduces the wealth gap within this
Mm-hmm.
country, within the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why not? Why
Yeah.
not have that happen?
So let's talk. There are two things on my mind bubbling up. I want to talk about being agreeable versus disagreeable,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
how that is a trauma response, and how that keeps us, particularly as women, from earning as much money. So I want to talk about that. And I'm outing myself there so I don't forget. But I want to give you a tool, because what Anne is talking about is not just intellectually understanding that you want more money. She's saying, feel in your body the difference of the experience of having more money versus I'm afraid to have more money, or I don't have money. Like, if you just lie on the floor, or you sit here and you're listening, or maybe you're driving and you just start to say to yourself, like, what is my body experience when I tell myself I don't have any money, I'll never make money, I'm not good enough to make money, I shouldn't make money because I love what I do, and if I made money too, I would be greedy. Like sit with that, like feel that in your body. You don't always have to understand the story. You can feel the story first, and that will lead you to greater intellectual understanding. But what does it feel like when you feel anxious about paying bills? When you believe or have the thought that people just don't make money in this industry? Or I'm a teacher, teachers just don't make money. Or like my mentor said to me, you're never going to make money teaching Pilates. Like how does that feel? And then notice that literally with a few deep breaths and a little bit of like a brisk walk, or lots of little things that you can do, even just like imagining the restriction in your body that you experience when you think about not having money, you can literally dissipate that body experience. Like when you, if your fear gets stuck in your solar plexus right below your rib cage, and you take a breath or two and just even massage your ribs to open, you'll feel that feeling starts to dissipate. And the nervous system is the root of all behavior. So when your body starts to feel safe from the inside, your brain will start to feel safe. And that's when you get closer to taking action, even when you're afraid. That's powerful stuff, right? Then think about, imagine having all the money that you could possibly have, and notice how quick the restriction shows up. Like imagine yourself somewhere, having something, being somewhere, having accomplished something like so grand, so magical. And notice how long. Does it take 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds? Does it take 60 seconds? Does it take 2 days before you're like, oh, F, I can't have that. You start to get nervous, or your body constricts, or you start to get agitated, or you're like, I'm done thinking about that. That's so stupid. I'm not going to think about that anymore because I'm getting agitated. Well, why? Like, what does your body response tell you? When there's tension in your body like that, particularly in the gut space, the heart space, when your heart starts to race, it's difficult to take a deep breath. Your mouth gets dry, right? You get sweaty. Like those are all fight or flight responses. Those are my nervous system is saying, whatever I am believing right now is making me not feel safe. It is a simple and beautiful way of unwinding much of what we've been talking about, right? The fear of having what you say you want to have. So just like a little practical, tidbit. Yeah, deep breath.
I already feel, I mean, it's just phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. So something we did, sorry, go ahead.
I was
Were
just
you
going to
gonna?
say, if this is the first time you've ever heard Chantel walk you through something like this and you feel nothing, hang in there. I promise you, it will come, because I used to feel nothing. And I've continued to work with Chantel. It's like Pavlov's dog. All I have to do is like hear the bell ring, and I'm like, ah.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
I
think,
just want to share that with you.
yeah, you're a
It's
hard.
still hope.
Well, when you're super intellectual, I think,
Mhm.
and you have some strong roots in like security and steadiness, you can be a hard nut to crack. You do have to. So keep showing up and keep listening for sure. But then it's like, yeah, it's like, when you start working out and you work out frequently enough or consistently enough, you really crave the endorphins, right? And you're like, what's
Mhm.
missing? What's missing? When you start doing the nervous system work regularly enough, you just know, you take a deep breath and your whole system shifts. And then that door it swings wide open and wider each time. Um, I was just thinking of something else. Well, then we don't want to just always project into the experience of fear, right? We want to actually practice
Yes.
feeling into the experience of desire fulfilled. right? I think of it as the language I use is liberation, freedom, empowerment, a sense of being untethered if you otherwise feel heavy or weighted. Um, Spend time cultivating that experience in your body, because having money is like that, right? Having
Mhm.
money is choice, it's freedom, and it's not selfish to want to have
Choice
freedom
and freedom.
and choice. Because think about all that you could do. I've been thinking a lot about about the refugees and the folks who are leaving Ukraine, and about like how amazing it would be to just send aid, to scoop up some of the kids, like what money can do, right? To heal the world. So spend time embodying the fulfillment of your desire, because we need to be able to shift in ourselves between the fear that comes up into the liberation that can be manifested and cultivated in here, right? In your cells, in your body experience. I did want to share one thing that I feel pretty strongly about, which is, and I've been making some interesting connections recently around. So there's a book that we love, We Should All Be Millionaires. It's by Rachel Rogers. Here it is sitting next to me because I wanted to quote it. And there was one part that I read a long time ago that has always stood out, and it's about some studies that were done that say essentially women who are agreeable make less money than women who are considered disagreeable, um, and that disagreeable women are perceived as being more competent, which I think is really fascinating. So the the research, she says, research study led by professors. Oh, hello, phone call. This is your destiny calling. You're about to earn more money. A research study led by professors from the University of Notre Dame, Cornell, and Western Ontario found that agreeable women earn less than those who are disagreeable. On average, the study found that agreeable women made $3,213 less per year than disagreeable ones. In addition, the study also found that disagreeable people are seen as more competent. So I share that because I want to make this connection with being agreeable, and how, particularly as females, it is a desire. We are taught it's a desired quality to be soft and to be, to make small talk and to be agreeable and not rock the boat. And in my mind, this leads us down, not always, but often, like this trail of like being appeasing. And being appeasing can also be talked about as being people pleasing. And the more I learn about the nervous system and the more I learn about trauma responses through the nervous system, what I know is that what I'm discovering is that appeasing or being agreeable, particularly when one does not feel agreeable, but being agreeable out of fear of being seen as unladylike, disruptive. Here are some of the
Unaccommodating.
words: unaccommodating. Here are the words that have been described to me. I'm just going to say it, by men. Well, no, and women: abrasive, rigid, opinionated. Like we don't always want to be seen that way, and so we appease and we people please. But appeasing and being unnecessarily agreeable or bending over backwards, which many of us do for our clients and students,
Mm.
is a trauma response. It's a response to not feeling safe. So fight, flight, feign, which is fainting, or fawning. Fawning is like, please don't, like, it's okay, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Just don't leave. Don't, whatever the
Don't leave a bad review on Yelp.
right.
I've
It
heard
runs
that
the
one.
Yeah, it runs the gamut. Don't leave because I can't be without your money. Don't be mad because I don't want a bad review. Don't be mad because don't hit me. Like this range of like appeasing and how it shows up is a response out of fear. And in relationship to money, I think it can be like you were talking about and have talked about often, Anne, is your ambition and feeling. I don't know what the word is that you would use, but I know that I have felt ashamed of being ambitious. And then I downplay my ambition
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
downplay my intelligence because I don't want to be seen as rigid, abrasive, unaccommodating, opinionated, all the things that feel like they are meant to be negative. And I think it's one of the reasons why we make less money or why we don't make as much money as we possibly could because we want to be accommodating. And as teachers and nurturers and healers, isn't that what we are supposed to be? It's a real shame, but it does not have to be that way. So I guess my point is, wow, it's fascinating, isn't it? How fear dictates our behavior 100%,
Mhm.
right? This is the nervous system as the foundation of behavior. When we can accurately assess whether or not we are safe, which we can't always, right? Our mind does all kinds of things to make us believe in instances that we are not safe and then prevents us from taking positive action. So uh, I would just encourage you to notice again, like, what's the fear around money? What's the fear around shifting the model of what you do so you can actually make more money? Will people be upset with you? Will they stop coming to you? Will they say bad things about you? Like, what's the fear and how can you move through it? Um, and I don't know, what do you think, Anne? I know we want to maybe wrap things up here. Do you have any final thoughts, nuggets?
I just know that, like, listening to all of this work and ideas are really great. But then really working through it on your own and then acting on it, for me has been the most powerful because I don't always embody what it is until I start to take action. Like, I don't even know if I
Yes.
can. It's like, I don't have what I want, which is to feel super safe making a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Right? So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm either going to not do anything and deal with that, or I'm going to start to take action despite the fact that haven't felt it yet. Because
Yeah.
I know for me, it's like the actions have to precede the feeling usually.
Mm.
And so how can I become more comfortable taking action before the feelings occur and before proof occurs? And so I just
Yes.
encourage all of us, to step into that.
Yeah. So what's one tiny action that you could take, right, to begin to cultivate opportunities of proving that having more is safe? One small action. That's
Yeah.
that that's I'm putting that in the world. I'm putting that out there in
Yeah.
the
I
world.
encourage everyone to do that. Take an action because we can get really used to not taking action and just thinking about things.
Yeah.
But if
So
you're in the embodied space, you probably preach action,
yeah.
right?
So
On some
take
level.
so the goal is take action even if you're afraid, but find in your body like how to dissipate the fear enough to take the action. All right. I love these conversations. I feel like they get better each time. Um, this is episode 4, and we'll catch you next time. Ciao.
Bye. All right, that wraps up our episode 4, Money and Safety, why and how we keep ourselves from what we say we desire. As always, we hope that you were able to connect with us and able to feel into your body a bit and also take away some inspired ideas for you to think about and maybe even take some action on. One thing that we always want to remind you is that if you are loving these episodes and loving our work, please review us either on iTunes or Spotify. And you can also just tell anyone you know about what we're talking about and how we're bringing that connection between embodiment, inspiration, and business together. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can do so at Chantil@pilatesmastersprogram.com or Anne@pilatesmastersprogram.com. Once again, we want to thank our musician, Max Mackey, for the intro and outro music. He is based in Colorado. So we hope to see your reviews and connect with you more.